11 o'clock Wednesday morning. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head and Chris Clark currently in the Herndon Chevrolet studios. Wes Mitchell said he'd be coming in hot, but as of this moment, not here yet.
Wes is hard at work on stories, Tyler. There's things going on in Columbia.
Well, I'm glad
we just had like a 30-minute phone meeting about. I probably was the reason he's.
Well, that's okay.
Working on some angles.
You guys work very hard.
Thank you.
I don't envy the job that you guys have to do because, well, with anything in journalism, there's no such thing as a 9 to 5. And I was randomly thinking. I don't know why I was thinking about this, but you told a story a while back about. I think after one of your kids was born, there's like a video of you walking around your living room on the phone talking about some recruit
while
like carrying the kid. It's like, this is the life that you guys live. Yeah. It's understandable. I get it.
But on the other hand, basketball game tonight.
Yes.
Gamecocks Texas A&M starts at 8:30 Eastern, which is already getting a little.
Not my favorite.
That's getting a little up there for me.
It's better than 9, but still not great.
And so you'll be up cutting some audio
very late
for tomorrow's show,
unfortunately,
after it's posted.
unless A&M can come in clutch and live stream as post-game presser. Some schools do, some schools don't, so I'm not going to count on it, but if anybody within the sound of my voice has control over that in Aggie land, I'd certainly appreciate that.
That would be great. Gamecock baseball,
another win last night.
Took care of business.
First couple of innings took a little bit of time to get some momentum rolling on offense, but then just blew it completely open. In that fifth inning, scoring all 7 of those runs. You had a very productive inning when you have to go to your bullpen the next inning because your pitcher's been sitting so long because you were on offense for that long.
He wasn't warm anymore.
He had to go to Ty Good, which, hats off to Eddie Copper. Had a great performance last night, his second start. In the midweek. And for a guy that's a freshman, being tasked with having one of those starting jobs, even in the midweek slate, that's a really big deal. And I think he's done a good job, stepping up to the task outside of that one, performance he had coming out of the bullpen in the first series against Miami of Ohio. Another good outing for him last night.
Yeah, Copper kind of had within one game what we saw from him his first couple of appearances, which was first start, scuffled. Second, appearance. First appearance scuffled. Second appearance really good, right? Rebounded. And I think we saw that, solo home run for Gardner Webb early. But he settled in, ended up picking up his first win of the season. He struck out 5 in those 5 innings, as you said, Tyler. Just 3 hits and the 1 run, which was on the home run, and just 1 walk. And then Ty Good came in. 2 hitless innings. Tyler Dean, Connor McCreary, they came in each and pitched a shutout inning. But I wasn't able to watch the entire game, so at one point I called up on social, hey, let me check the score real quick. And it was, I think Copper had just come out for that 5th inning, and I'm sitting there going, still 1-0. I'm like, it's time for them to get something cooking, and it was that very inning. Gavin Cassis comes up, blasts a 3-run home run to right, smoked that ball.
We were this close to having a Palmetto Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway already, but that was a 3-run homer, not a Grand Slam.
Is it officially hate Clemson week? Like I feel like for baseball you have to wait till you get the midweek out of the way before you can. Like I heard some Clemson chatter already on Gamecock Twitter after Sunday's game, and I'm like, no. You got to get this one out of the way, because if you overlook a game in baseball, you can get beat.
Hey, anything can happen in a baseball game.
And early on, like Chris said, it was tight. But beware of flying baseballs, because that ball that Casas hit, I think, is still up there with a SpaceX rocket or something. Like, that thing was blasted. And I actually, so I was getting ready to leave the house, and so I was watching the game, but I wasn't paying attention to every little thing. And I thought for a moment that we had our Grand Slam winner, because I knew there were a lot of guys on base, but not quite. And so did one of their players do the old get in the box?
Yes.
Yeah.
Someone did.
Somebody yelled "get in the box, Cassis," and I think it was the next pitch that he took yard.
It was literally like 1 second apart. Get in the box, Cassis. Boom.
Man.
Yeah. Amazing.
That thing was blasted. He scuffled a little bit early, man, but if you have him going in this lineup combined with the guys we were talking about yesterday that really aren't your necessarily marquee players, but either are new kind of incoming transfers or are guys that have, have been here a couple years but aren't necessarily your biggest names, like a Dylan Brewer. When you have guys like that all kind of contributing at once, that to me that's how you have, especially in modern baseball, that's how you have successful offenses. Yeah. If you're kind of the old school way of just relying on your kind of middle of the order guys for power, it is you're very reliant on those guys consistently being good. And when they're not good, your lineup can kind of slump. And I think the beauty of this group that they've put together for this year, there's depth to this lineup. And there's depth really on the bench as well, to where if some guys start to struggle, you're going to see different players inserted in there at various times this season, because we know it's a long year. You're going to have ups, you're going to have downs. But I really like what we've seen from this lineup so far, just really top to bottom, in that you're not going to – it's kind of like the Braves. You're not going to put any pressure on any one person, because on any given night it can be a different guy.
Well, and you're looking at a situation, last night was another example, much like Sunday. It was because you had a lefty starting on the mound for Gardner Webb, where you put Kennedy Jones at the top of the lineup and a Ryan Bakesley starting the game as your DH. So you really have like 11 guys in the mix for these 9 spots in your order. And again, depending on matchup and that kind of stuff, depends on who's going to go where. But as Coach Kingston said, I think coming away from Sunday's game against Belmont, better to have more than to not have enough. Only having 7 guys trying to figure out how to make it stretch across 9 positions. So South Carolina in a very good position as of right now, improving to 8-1 with the win last night and getting set for what's going to be the real litmus test this weekend, taking on Clemson, who again is top 10 in D1 baseball rankings themselves, and a team that hits for a lot of power, one of the best teams when it comes to hitting home runs this season so far in college baseball, and we'll really get a gauge of where this South Carolina team is at after 3 games this weekend. Yeah, it's going to be fun. That's always your first barometer almost every year of where you're at as a program, really, for both those teams. And I think, like you said, man, this thing goes 11 deep, but that's not even including Carson Hornug, who's played a ton of ball for you. You kind of think at some point maybe he pushes his way into the mix. You got Evan Stone, who's a great defender. And you got a guy in Austin Brendling, who I thought, just looking at what he did statistically, was a really nice addition to this team as well, and had sort of hit for average at least before he got here. So I think it's always a fun kind of it's always fun to just pay attention to how does a lineup kind of morph or evolve as a season progresses. And we'll kind of see what that looks like for South Carolina. Lee Ellis, the shortstop, he's a freshman that South Carolina apparently very high on as a talent. So do we see more of him as the year progresses as well? I think there's a lot of things yet to be determined, but like you said, it's one of those things where it's a good problem. It's not that you're searching for answers. Sure. It's you're searching for, can the cream rise to the top, basically. As far as the rivalry with Clemson goes this week, and you guys did a very good job of getting me up to speed on everything with the rivalry prior to the football contest back in November. Is there anything new I need to know prior to the baseball series as far as hating Clemson properly goes? Yeah. I did get tagged in that weird thing on Twitter the other day with some fan that made like a 2.5-hour compilation of us talking about why South Carolina could beat Clemson last fall. And again, it was a 16-7 game. It's not like they got blown out by any means, but should I be honored that I got included in that? I guess so. I mean, no. That guy, I can't remember his name. That guy's actually a pretty loyal listener, I think, to 107.5. So okay. More power to him. I noticed he didn't include the predictions for the game last season. Like, I didn't see any podcast on that game from Clemson fans. So, but hey, they got bragging rights right now. But it's cool. I don't know what we said that made
baseball. They don't.
I couldn't find it. I skimmed through. I couldn't find anything. Yeah, this was for football. All football, I guess. But
they left out the baseball, as you said. Well, I know one.
What's yours?
I got 2 things that I always think about. You go ahead.
No, my thing that you always see with Clemson, South Carolina, is in baseball is regular season, and yes, bragging rights matter. So if South Carolina wins 2 of 3 this weekend, they should get to talk junk to their cousins. Sure. Clemson, same. The Taters, right? Clemson, same. I'm not going to say that, but yes. Clemson wins 2 of 3, they should get the talk. But South Carolina always beats Clemson in postseason in baseball.
That's a good one.
That's what you need to know. Basically, when they face each other in modern times, when these teams play in the postseason, South Carolina has found a way to win the games that matter, including 2 in a row, back-to-back at Omaha, when Clemson had the chance to send South Carolina home, and instead South Carolina sent Clemson home. So that will always stick in the craw for Clemson fans, that South Carolina has been able to hold that over their heads.
And that was the 2010 season when Clemson won the regular season series, including a 19-6 win. Yeah, 19-6 in Columbia. Brutal game. So they had bragging rights, but then comes postseason time, Clemson, they're all wound up. Here we go. We're about to send the Gamecocks home. No.
Do you remember who started that game? The regular season finale in Columbia?
Jay Brown, wasn't it?
I think it was Tyler Webb.
Tyler Webb. Okay. I feel like Jay might have pitched in that game. But yeah, Jay didn't start that game, yeah.
I know Tyler Webb pitched in that game, struggled, but then, I mean, that's the guy who ends up, I mean, Tyler's been in the league.
Yeah.
Is that the one where the Clemson player called Webb soft, or was that a different year?
I'm too old, Chris.
I keep thinking of random things. So I had a couple other things, but here's actually one I love. I think this was this the neutral site game? So you remember Walker hits a homer, and I think it was Walker, right? Christian Walker, and then Jack Leggett wants to check the bats. Former Clemson coach Jack Leggett. He wants to check the bats and accuse South Carolina of warming their bats.
Yes, that was the bat warmer
and Tanner,
controversy.
Ray Tanner, in the post game was peeved.
Ooh.
And man, you need to pull some of that sound, Tyler. That would be fun.
Okay, I'll see if I can find that.
That was definitely either at Clemson or at the neutral site.
Yes, I remember they had on they were wearing black jackets. I remember
2010, right?
I don't remember if it's the next year.
Okay, I'll see what I can dig up.
But Tanner was like, I'll find it and get it to you.
Okay.
Tanner was like, yeah, when I can't remember the one really good player Clemson had. He's like, yeah, when he hits one 500 feet, I guess it's fine. We hit a homer and we're warming bats. He's like, I didn't appreciate it. He called it shenanigans. It was awesome.
That's great.
That's one of my favorite moments.
Well,
it's a good clip, I feel like.
Okay, I'll see if I can dig it up. If you guys find it, send it to me. We'll definitely have that as the week goes along here. We're going to need the trends of the past couple of years to go in a different direction, because since Kingston's been at the helm, the even number years have gone South Carolina's way as far as the regular season in this rivalry. Unfortunately, the even number years have gone Clemson's way, so we need a little bit of reversal of fortune in 2024 for South Carolina to come away with the series victory this upcoming weekend. But excited for it. We'll have plenty more preview of that over the next couple days, getting set for Friday night's game here in Columbia. Then you're going to be at Segra Park on Saturday afternoon, and then up in the upstate at Clemson to wrap up the series coming up on Sunday. Coming up next year, though, to get dive into some basketball conversation, is our guy James Fletcher, correct?
James Fletcher the third.
The third. Okay, well, I won't leave that part out. James Fletcher the third.
On three,
from
bracketologist.
Going to talk a little bit of bracketology with South Carolina and where they stand as of right now, getting set for tonight's matchup, taking on Texas A&M. That's all coming up right here on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs on the Game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark along with you on this Wednesday morning. Coming up tonight, Gamecock men in action taking on Texas A&M. Road trip 8 o'clock pregame, 8:30 tip out there in College Station as they wind down the regular season. We now head out to the Love Chevrolet Fun Lanes. Welcome in from On3 bracketologist James Fletcher III. And James, first of all, thanks so much for taking a few minutes of your time this morning. We've been talking about this over these past couple weeks, what South Carolina needs to do to secure a spot in the NCAA tournament. With 4 games left in the regular season and obviously the SEC tournament coming up here in a couple weeks as well. In your opinion, from a bare minimum standpoint, what does South Carolina need to do to lock up a spot over these next couple of games?
I think, first of all, thanks for having me on. For South Carolina, it's really playing with house money at this point. I know that their standing in the net ranking has left a little bit of discussion over the past couple of weeks, but now we look and they're up in the top 50. They've got 4 games left in the regular season, starting tonight with Texas A&M. All 4 of those games, as they stand, are quad 1 opportunities. So if you can pick up even a 1 of those 3, that would then bring you up to 5 quad 1 wins. And, of course, they are right now 9-3 in the first 2 quadrants. So that's a resume that no matter what the computer numbers say, that resume is going to boost them up into the conversation as we get closer to Selection Sunday. And I think that they're pretty comfortable as things stand. But, of course, as we get into March, you can't afford to take a bunch of losses in a row. So I think an early SEC tournament exit would be the most dangerous thing that the Gamecocks could have over these next few weeks.
Hey, James, it's Wes. Appreciate you doing this, man. Like you said, plenty of opportunities against teams that the computers are going to kind of love as long as South Carolina can maybe win 1 or 2 of them. What do you think the upside is for this South Carolina team in terms of seeding? Like, I don't think you look at this schedule and say, even if they play well, they're probably not going to win out. But let's say they add 2-3 more wins to this thing. How high do you think they could end up climbing in the seeding as they sort of play for seeding down the stretch here?
Yeah, right now I've got them on the 7 line. I'll update that here in a couple of days. I think they can easily get to 6 if, like you said, they pick up 2, maybe even 3 wins. If they can do 3 wins and then you get a good an SEC tournament performance, I can see them going up into that 5 seed conversation. And then if we want to get crazy, we want to say, hey, maybe they win all 4, they go on this big run, say they win the SEC tournament or at least make it to that championship game on Sunday. The ceiling really for the Gamecocks is probably in that top 4 seed conversation. But like I said, they would have to go pretty much flawless from here until that point to get that done.
James, Chris Clark here. Let's go to the flip side of that. We all seem to feel pretty good about this team getting into the tournament based on what they've done. But let's say they do the opposite of that, right? And these last 4 games, as you said, I mean, they're quad 1 games. 2 of them are on the road. A couple of them are against ranked teams, including Tennessee. It's a tough slate. And then you got the SEC tournament where sometimes South Carolina struggled historically. What if it goes in the other direction and you're 0 for 4, 0 for 5, 1 of 4, What could that maybe look like in terms of how would that adjust South Carolina's seeding downward potentially?
Right. I do think that there is room for them to drop here from where they are on that 7 line. Like you said, if they're not able to capitalize on these opportunities, it does bring the resume a little bit back towards the pack because right now they're so far above 500 in quad 1 and quad 2 games. Those are the games that the committee cares about your wins. In quad 3 and 4, they really only care about how many games you lose there. And I don't see South Carolina having many more additions to that. I mean, really, the SEC tournament is the only chance they have left to drop a quad 3 or quad 4 game. So I think for South Carolina, the downward spiral that you're talking about, if it played out, would probably end in them as a 10 seed. I'd say that's probably the worst case scenario, unless, of course, we see something wild happen around the bubble. But I do think they're pretty safely in the field right now. If they just lose games to good teams, they're not going to get killed with the head start they have from an overall record standpoint and from a strength of record standpoint. That's one metric that we don't look at super often, but they're top 15 in the country there. So the numbers do suggest that they're pretty comfortable, but definitely could fall down a couple seed lines here if they go on a losing streak.
Again, talking to James Fletcher, the third bracketologist, 4-on-3. Looking at this season as a whole, and Gordon, South Carolina, sitting at 22-5 as of right now, but did start off 2-2 in conference play before going on that 7-game win streak. Was there a definitive game or definitive moment in this season where you looked at the South Carolina team and said, hey, this is a legitimate enough team to be in the NCAA tournament when it's all said and done?
Yeah, I think that for sure it was that stretch where they beat Kentucky, they pick up a quad 1 win, and you think, okay, maybe this record that they have, all these wins that they've accumulated through non-conference play, maybe it's legit. Maybe this South Carolina team should be in this tournament conversation. And then they follow it up a week later by beating Tennessee on the road. And that really removed all doubt. This South Carolina team was legit, and they were a real threat in the NCAA tournament, because you don't go beat Kentucky and then follow that up with a win at Tennessee if you're not one of the best teams in the SEC and one of the teams that can contend for postseason play.
James, speaking of contending for postseason play, South Carolina is facing two teams that are right there on the bubble, starting with Ole Miss this past weekend. That was a game Ole Miss, I would say, really needed, especially at home. Then you're A&M, you're sitting there, you need this game as well. I'm looking, I think you have A&M in the first 4 out. What can you tell us about this A&M team, both in terms of their tournament chances, but also maybe a little insight on what South Carolina can expect from their opponent on the court tonight?
Yeah, Texas A&M's in desperation mode at this point because they've let the opportunities slip away from them. They had good wins in quad 1. They've got a decent resume up top, but like I said, it's those quad 3 and quad 4 losses that are going to kill you, and Texas A&M has just let that get away from them. They've lost to Vanderbilt and Arkansas here in recent weeks, and that's just not going to cut it. When you get down to it and you're comparing these teams, the selection committee is going to have to draw a difference somewhere, and when a lot of these teams have quad 1 wins on their resume, they're going to look at what were the bad losses you took. Texas A&M has more of those than most of the teams around them. So for Texas A&M, they've got to go into desperation mode here, and they should be playing at full intensity. But we've seen them struggle on the road here recently. They do play a physical brand of basketball. We know what they want to do. They want to get it to Wade Taylor. They want to get it to Tyrese Radford. And then from there, they're going to take whatever they can get from the role players. So for South Carolina, I think the key really is shut off the perimeter, keep those guards from getting going, and then ride that home atmosphere and hope that you can play your style of basketball, because the Texas A&M team, they've been on a downward trend, and they're going to come out really looking to flip things around here.
Well, we certainly hope South Carolina goes in College Station tonight and locks up another victory to continue to further help their cause of locking up a spot in the NCAA tournament. James, thank you so much for taking some of your time this morning, and we're very excited to see how South Carolina closes out the regular season over these next couple of games.
All right, thanks for having me, guys.
Again, James Fletcher, the third from On3, their bracketologist there. We'll jump into some conversation about a radical proposal about another signing period in college football and what that could mean going forward over these next couple years. That's coming up. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on The Game.
Our friends Michael and Nathan and the whole team at Integrated Media can come out to your home just like they've come out to my home, just like they've come out to Wes Mitchell's home. They can help you enjoy all of your home's modern conveniences, smart home installation services right here in the Midlands. They can help transform your home into a smart home where you can control all of your lights, your thermostat, your sound system, everything in your home from the touch of a button in your smart home, on your smartphone, whether you're at home or you're away. Super convenient, super easy to use, and you can certainly impress your guests and your fellow family members. If you're interested in upgrading your home theater system, if you want to make your entertainment room the place to be. The team at Integrated Media can help you do that. IntegratedMediaInc.com is where you can go for a photo gallery to learn more about their services and about what they can do for you right here in the Midlands. 803-948-8327 or IntegratedMediaInc.com.
Welcome back in. It's Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, and Chris Clark along with you on this Wednesday morning. A reminder, once again, the Rivalry Friday ticket giveaway winner going to be announced later on today at 5:15 on the post-game show with Jay and Elijah. So if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Game TV, and filled out the form on 1075thegame.com, you are entered for your chance to win tickets to see the Gamecocks and the Tigers coming up on Friday evening out at Founders Park. Chris sent me this a little bit earlier. Go back to last week, the week before, I can't remember exactly. There was the conversation about moving the early signing period up in the month of December because of the change of the college football playoff calendar with the 12-team playoff, having games going on the week before Christmas and all that kind of stuff. There's now a new proposal that's being reported by Pete Thamel of ESPN of maybe even adding in an additional signing period in the summer. So you'd still have December, the early signing period, the traditional signing day in February as well, and potentially one at the end of June too. With all the possibilities of the college football calendar that we've discussed, over time, this is one of the things that, at least having 3 different periods, that we've never, I guess, really thought of up to this point.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense when you just look at the kind of practically how the players are kind of making their decisions right now. And if you've been paying attention to South Carolina recruiting the last few weeks, you'll probably see, hey, this guy just announced he's setting an official visit. That guy just set an official visit. And for all these guys, you're seeing May 31st, you're seeing the first weekend in June, you're seeing the next weekend in June. And so it kind of actually, I think, makes complete sense because we see it all the time. Prospects who say, I'm going to take my official visits in June, and then I'm going to make a decision shortly after that. Now, I thought when the possibility of a summer signing day came up, I thought it might be a little bit later in the summer because generally you see these kids, some of them go ahead and decide in June, but a lot of them take July, which is probably your most slow recruiting period of the entire calendar in terms of actual things happening. Coaches aren't on the road. Players aren't on the road for most of that month. And they take that to kind of just sit back and go over things with their families and, pros and cons, all that stuff. So that's a little bit early, but if you take 3 or 4 official visits in June, there will be a lot of guys who I think would take advantage of going ahead and signing in the summer. And so this is not completely out of left field is what I'm trying to say.
I wonder how many guys will take advantage of that. Like, remember when the early signing period for December was put in? Now, it has almost completely replaced February. You've still got the February signing period, but it completely shifted things. It started that first year where you had the majority, a lot of times the overwhelming majority of your committed prospects went ahead and signed that December. And that trend has continued. That trend has actually continued to go in that direction to where most kids sign then. And then it pushed, this is something Nick Saban talked about a lot, it pushed the whole recruiting process back some to where, that coincided with they put in summer officials. We didn't used to have summer official visits. That's easy to forget. You had to do them during the season or in, December, January, leading up to the February signing day. So now you see, you see more spring visits, you see more summer visits, you see summer officials, and then kids will sign in December. So how many kids, will decide in June? Because it's different to, as you said, Wes, go through the process, go through spring, take some summer officials. A lot of guys are ready to commit then, but commit different than sign, So how many sign if there's a June period? I'm intrigued by that. I don't have as good of an answer as I thought I did, when the December signing period came out.
Well, the benefit of having a summer period would allow these guys to go ahead and sign before playing their last respective years of high school football, their senior year,
yes.
Whatever it may be. And that, takes away some of the stress of having to deal with, visits and all that kind of stuff while the season's going on, which they can still, do obviously for the school that they've committed to or signed with at that point in time. But and obviously you guys are, ingrained in the recruiting process. Is that something you feel like a lot of recruits would be on board with, going ahead and getting the signing out of the way before they start their final season of high school football?
It's hard to know at this point. I think you'd almost have to start polling guys and see what they're thinking. June does, like I said, that feels a little bit earlier than maybe I expected. I thought maybe August and kind of doing it before your high school season and before your college season. To me, that makes sense. Now, with the current summer calendar, again, your official visits, those are being stacked into June. So I see why they went with late June, because they're saying, all right, take your officials and then decide right after that. And then sort of everybody can just take July off for the most part. Like, July is really the last chance you have to recharge I think certainly if you're a college coach, to an extent, your college athletes are going to be working, but high school guys, that's your last chance to kind of reset as well. So that part makes sense. the real question is how much upside is there if you're a top recruit to going ahead and signing, because and how enforceable is it that you even signed? Because
nowadays.
yeah, because we're seeing this with the transfer portal. I mean, On3 created a new phrase just to categorize guys who signed with one school in December and then already have basically hit the portal and ended up elsewhere. So if it doesn't actually lock anything in, what is the point? I feel like there's almost some bigger things that have to be figured out about how all this is going to work. That to me stem all the way back to like revenue share. Are these employees? Are there going to be, because they're now employees or sharing revenue, some guardrails on transfer portal that make this actually matter? But then if I'm 5-star Chris Clark running a 4.4 and I got all the offers in the world, why wouldn't I just wait and see what my top 5 teams are going to do during my senior season before I decide? Now, if I'm Wes Mitchell and I'm a 2.5-star and I feel like I've gotten the best offer I'm going to get, I may say, lock me in now. I want that spot. But then at the same time, are the schools going to say, why am I going to go ahead and sign you now when I can wait and see who else is out there? So life is all about incentives. What is the incentive on either side for me to go ahead and sign in June? I think is the big question.
Yeah, and I think that is the big question with that. I kind of am going back, though, to the month of December. That is the most chaotic month. And so I think the proposals for that month to get it kind of more under control are probably, in the grand scheme, they're probably more important right now. You know, what do you do with the transfer portal window, and then when is the early signing period? It had previously been reported they were going to move the early signing period in December back a little bit, right after, right before the playoffs start, right? After conference title games are right in that same time. And then that way, that signing period isn't overlapping with the transfer portal. That's probably the biggest thing, is that's what's caused so much chaos in December. That's why it's so insane, is because you've got coaching changes, college football playoff, bowl prep for most teams, high school and JUCO recruiting, and transfer portal, coaches being on the road, prospects visiting. You're like 7 things going on at once. You can't manage all that. And so I think, what can you do in December to make that a little bit more, tenable? That's the even bigger question, I think.
Tenable. Good word, Chris.
Thank you.
Which if I'm reading this right, I think Thamel is saying still moving up December.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what it sounds like.
Is a part of this as well. Which so it may be that you do all this at once. I guess.
Which again, they're meeting in Indianapolis, right now on all these things. So I imagine it'd be one kind of formal announcement with all these things moving, like you said, at the same time. For I'm guessing this upcoming calendar, where you can have an early signing period in late June this year.
Yeah, and I'll keep beating this drum. I think transfers need to have a signing day as well, or just literally, hey, once the portal is open, once you know where you're going, you go ahead and sign. And I think once you sign, that should lock you in for at least playing one season at that school. Like, once you sign that, the school is going to acknowledge that they're giving you a scholarship, and you're going to acknowledge, hey, I'm going to be there for 1 year. Like, to me, that is a very simple, not a fix, but a very simple tweak that at least takes one thing off the plate. Because if I have a guy that wants to commit, but he's not ready to sign out of the transfer portal, I'm going to be like, all right, dude, then you're not committed at all. So I think that's something that hasn't been talked about as much, but I know it's been mentioned. That would be an easy tweak for all this.
And again, I imagine we'll get an announcement here sometime soon if they do decide to change this or change the recruiting calendar for this upcoming year. We'll come back and wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on the Game. Welcome back in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris along with you for a few more minutes. We'll get into a little bit of basketball conversation here to wrap up the show in just a second. But as always, we thank our friends over at Gold Line Framing for being such a great supporter of the show.
Yeah, we got to get over there soon again, guys, to see our friends Kendall Walsh and Joni James. Shout out to them. You know what? I was watching the basketball game on TV the other day, and there was Kendall and Joni just hanging out, front row, watching the game.
VIP treatment.
Oh, yeah. They were probably out there telling everybody they know that, hey, if you've got a diploma, original artwork, canvas, jersey, or a flag, really anything, come on over to Gold Line Framing. We can frame it up for you. That's at 511 12th Street, West Columbia. It's been in business for over 20 years. And in-store, if you want more gift ideas, they've got an art gallery, home decor, furniture, and gift items all right there in store. If you got questions, call them today, 803-739-1337. Open Tuesday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., and then Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Again, Gold Line Framing. Check them out for any and all of your framing needs. And I promise you, they're going to be dialed in to men's basketball this week, women's basketball this week, baseball this weekend. We are on a collision course for a big Gamecock weekend.
Absolutely, and that gets started tonight with men's basketball on the road, taking on A&M. Again, 8:30 tip, 8 o'clock pregame starting right here on the game. This is an A&M team. It's going back to our conversation with James Fletcher, the third from On Three, a little bit earlier, that they were 6-4 at one point in time and feeling pretty good about where they sat as far as, you know, their potential for the NCAA tournament. They go into tonight's game on the outside looking in that first four out category, similar to, you know, where Ole Miss was on the bubble going into this past weekend's game against South Carolina. So once again, you have a team that literally has their season almost on the line going into this game. And again, South Carolina sitting in a little bit more of a comfortable position, but as James mentioned a little bit earlier, needing to put a couple more wins together to feel secure about your spot in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, you start looking through their body of work, and you know, this is a team that's lost some pretty close games to some good teams. You know, Houston, 4 in the country. They only lost by 4 points there. They also have a win over Kentucky, does A&M.
And Tennessee.
Yeah, they went to Auburn, a place that South Carolina really struggled. And, I mean, Auburn ended up winning the game by 11, but they hung in there. But then you look at what this team is. They also have a win over Florida, by the way. You look at what this team has done recently, though. They went from beating Florida and Tennessee and a really handily road win at Missouri in 3 straight games to losing to Vanderbilt, Alabama, Arkansas, and losing handily to Tennessee. So they probably 4 games ago were having conversations like, hey, they're firmly in. And now they're sitting there, much like Ole Miss going into the game this past Saturday, firmly on the bubble. Sounds like a lot of people think they're outside looking in as far as being in the tournament, and it's a home game for them, obviously. You look at the rest of their schedule, they don't quite have – they've got winnable games, but they don't quite have games left that are as pretty to the computers as South Carolina does. So this is a game, not necessarily that it's a huge win for you if you get it by the computers, because it is a home game, which the net doesn't reward those as much. But I don't think you can afford to add another loss to the tally if you're Texas A&M. So they are desperate for wins at this point.
That's the exact word he used, right? Desperate, I think. And you know, Ole Miss, another bubble team, they, you know, needed that South Carolina win. And, you know, I think there are a lot of teams, South Carolina being one of them in the SEC, that are, you know, they're playing for seeding at this point. But there are some that are on that bubble, and A&M's one. And, look, this is a capable team, you know, went through some of it, Wes. I mean, some of the teams that they've been able to beat, Tennessee, Kentucky, this is a team that when they're on and when they're playing at home, which they are, you know, they're a lot better. They're an extremely capable team. I was looking through it, guys. Interestingly, I was going back and looking at the 2016 and 17 South Carolina Gamecocks basketball team. Of course, that's the one that went on to the Final Four. You know, they finished in conference. Anybody know off the top of their head?
Nope.
They were 12-6 in conference. So.
Yeah,
They were a 7 seed. Famously, the Kentucky Sports Radio guys, worst 7 seed in history.
Backfired on them a
They
little
did
bit.
okay for themselves in that one.
These guys put their foot in their mouths quite a bit, don't they?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to South Carolina athletics. It seems like I'm looking at A&M. This is not the prettiest resume when you just look at the numbers without looking at some of their big wins.
Yeah.
I mean, 15-12 overall, and you start going through quad 1, 6-6, quad 2 games, 2-2, quad 3 games, 2-4. Like, you can see why A&M is a team that right now is not firmly in. Yeah, they do have the big wins that show you what they're capable of, and that, I feel like, is probably propping them up. Right now, they're 57th in the net, but we'll see what happens tonight.
Absolutely. So, again, pregame coverage starting at 8 o'clock. Tip-off coming at 8:30 as we see if South Carolina can put another win together and continue to bolster that resume for the NCAA tournament. That'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Coming up next, the halftime show, myself and Terry Ford right here on The Game.
Guys, had the chance to hang out with my guy Larry Chandler last night. It was great to see him, and he would love to see you at one of the 14 great Firehouse Subs locations here in the Midlands. If you want the most efficient way to order your lunch, go ahead, do the Rapid Rescue to go right now. You can do that one of two ways.